Welcome everyone to the Howl podcast, where we feature individuals from various backgrounds who have captivating stories to tell. Our goal is to bring people together by sharing diverse perspectives and experiences to inspire positive change in the world. And I am your host, Nicholas Barber. Sitting with me today is an extremely talented actress with a background in acting and international studies from Columbia College of Chicago, as well as studying at Rose Burford College in London. Carsen's journey has been filled with enriching experiences and a dedication to owning her craft. Her love for the stage shines through in her theater performances, where she captivates audiences with her expressive range and captivating presence. It is an honor to have on the show Carsen Schroeder.
Oh, thank you. Oh, such a great introduction.
Yeah, it's been spending months working together, and I really appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that we have all given to the project TAHANAN. Before we begin with this episode, though, I just want to highlight that this wonderful human being sharing the airwaves with us tonight is, again, Carsen. Her talents extend far beyond acting alone. She's, a very, by the term alone, a true artist who excels in various forms of expression, from even ballet to stage combat. Her diverse skills add to her performances and her knowledges on the stage, and it is felt by everyone in the presence of Carsen herself. For the people who don't know or haven't had the privilege of knowing you, give us a little backstory of your life in America, because you are a traveler as well, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Kansas City, or Overland Park, Kansas, for people who know Kansas well. But I've lived a little bit all over. I lived a little bit in Massachusetts, and then I went back to Kansas City, and then I lived in Chicago for a few years for school, and then did a little bit of time in London. And now I'm in LA. So I have been all over, but I would say Kansas is my home.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And how does that feel, like, in your perspective, like coming here to LA? And it's such a lively city, right? There's always something going on, and there's always work to be done. How do you find the differences, I guess, when you go? Have you gone back to Kansas yet?
Yeah, usually I go back for holidays and stuff, so I'm there a couple times a year. But I mean, it's very different. But I like to be busy, so that's good, because I think Kansas, when I go home, it's much more relaxed. It's like I'll just sit at home and read a book all day or play games with my family. But I mean, there was enough to do that's where I got my start in acting in the arts, and Kansas City has an amazing art scene. Like, I will always love the Kansas City Ballet and the art galleries and everything. Like, they have a beautiful art scene in Kansas City, and so I really do have to tribute that, all of my start to Kansas City. But that kind of opened the door for being able to come to LA and be busy all the time, which is awesome. I love to always be working.
Oh, that's good. I actually know that about Kansas. Where would the place be? Like, if someone were to travel, like if someone has a road trip planned and they're going over Kansas and they want the arts, what are 3 places that are a must?
Oh my gosh. Well, for the art in Kansas City, I mean, it's hard because they've got everything. They have visual art, they have dance, they have theater. My dad is a painter, and he there's this restaurant called The Brick that's in downtown Kansas City, and they always feature local artists. And actually, my dad has an installation on the bar there, which is really, so it's like a mural on the bar. But that would be a great place, one for food, which I also consider art, and paintings, any type of local artists. The Kansas City Ballet, that's where I grew up dancing. They have shows going on all year round. If you go over Christmas time and see the Nutcracker, it is the best ballet ever. It will always hold a special place in my heart. And then, it's hard. Maybe the Coterie Theater. It's a children's theater that I used to go to all the time. It's at Union Station, or not Union Station. It's right across from Union Station in Kansas City. and they just have really fun children's theater. My brother, my sister, and I would always go growing up.
That's great. That's great. And a funny story about your dad, actually, that I just want to share to the viewers. One of the actors as well in the film does miniature painting. And it just so happened that they were actually following each other, your father and one of the actors.
Oh, yeah, that's actually my stepdad.
Oh, your
my stepdad
okay.
does the miniature. Yeah, there's a lot of art in my family, but my stepdad does the miniature painting, which, Alex was like, oh, wait, I follow him on Instagram, which is so crazy. Because
it's funny how art connects people. Yeah. Oh, it's a very passionate group of individuals, too. Yeah.
It is. And it's a very niche, category to be like, oh, someone in LA knows, my stepdad in Kansas does, miniature painting. That was so funny when we found that out.
Yeah. And something I want to run down too, since I cannot talk about this enough when I'm here in LA, but you mentioned you also like reading, and something that I want to share to people in LA is if you have your library card, you can actually rent a lot of books from the library, borrow books from the library, digital or the physical books with just your library card. So everybody in LA, California, get your library cards. It's like a Pokemon game. Each library has different audiobooks and whatever. So definitely check that out. But thank you for so much for sharing about Kansas. Definitely, a road trip is definitely something that is talked about with me and my friend groups here. There's so much to explore in America. There's the diverse culture, the histories of each. If we're going in art, right? There's various histories of art in America as well. And as we're jumping into this episode now, this episode is mostly going to be talking about your reflection and experiences in acting and how that has shaped you into who you are today. Are you ready to get into this conversation? So I just wanted to start this conversation out with how you approach the process of embodying a character and bringing them to life per se. What techniques or methods do you find most effective in connecting with a character on a deep level?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's something, honestly, that I'm still figuring out. I think it's different for every process because I would say I'm still really new in my acting career, my acting journey. And so it's something that also, I apologize, my cat is screaming in the background. But it's something that usually I think I approach always starting with movement in the body because I started out in dance. And so that's really important to me is how a character moves and how they feel. I don't like sitting down and working on a script. I'm usually pacing around my apartment and being okay, how would they move? How would we do this? Because then also it doesn't become as stiff. I think when I'm just sitting memorizing lines, it feels a little disconnected.
It's more in the brain.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be, it should be in the body, which also probably comes from my theater background, which I think has been a little hard to transfer to film because film is so it's
controlled,
very small.
Right?
And so it's harder to translate that. But I also had a really great movement teacher in college that worked a lot with chakras and how those translate to character. And I still love doing that. It's because I think it's such an interesting way to approach something is based off of the way your body can change based off of what chakras are open or closed, or what chakras are really present in certain characters, I think is a really cool way to approach it as well. And so, but I would say mostly movement based is where I start and then kind of work from there.
That is so. That's the first time I've heard that. Actually, that is very interesting because I really do believe at a young age, my mother always spoke about chakras, and I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and she's like, "Oh, we gotta acupuncture you, so we unblock your energy." And I'm just okay, and I just knock out. But chakras and acting, that's very interesting. Was that something taught in Kansas, in theater?
No, that was when I was in Chicago. I had started just in basic movement classes. My movement teacher, Julianne Graham, I love her. She was amazing. And she kind of mentored me throughout college. But she was she was a movement teacher. She was an actor. She did yoga. She was an acupuncturist. Like she just took things from like all perspectives and really believed that like acting had a lot to do with like energy and the soul. And that no matter what character you're doing, it's all connected with the body. And so we did a lot of chakra work and just a lot of character studies on like what even the difference between like if it was just your root chakra, how that would change an entire character, how they walk, how they move, how they emote. And so that was really just like something that stuck with me as a way that I really liked that approach.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I'm actually going a little bit off here, but I genuinely have questions. That requires a great level of self-awareness, right? To understand where your energy is coming from and how to like channel it. So question to you, what if, you're in your ordinary life, you're going through the stresses of life, and life can be a little bit stressful, right?
Yeah.
So when there is a blockage, when you feel a blockage, does that affect how you portray characters, or how do you like get through the blockage?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's really challenging because like you go throughout life generally with your own insecurities, your own blockages. So to try and surpass that and then also find the insecurities or blockages that a character might have, it's a lot of layering. That's like, sometimes it gets really mixed up and you're like, I just can't get past it today. Life is too much. And so but it does require a lot of self-awareness. And sometimes it's like, it's an extra challenge. Like if because the chakras connect a lot to personality and things like that. Like if someone is I'm very shy. So there's a lot of that I have to get past sometimes if a character is very outspoken, because that's not how I am at all. Yeah. And so it's kind of going through like different levels of like trying to strip away your own things, but then still keep it connected to yourself. And yeah, it's a lot, but that's like what's fun about it too.
Yeah. And that's really, it's like in my interpretations, that's like pseudo acting right there. And it's really great that you get to do that, again, like we've worked together on a film, and just great. Like before even like just the rehearsals, just understanding the character, working with you, like you really took that extra step and just adding that, another layer to the talented Carsen Schroeder. A quick question for you. Can you share a specific character you've played in the past who had a profound impact on you, and how did you approach that role, and what were the challenges and the rewards from embodying that character, I guess?
Yeah, I did a show when I was studying in London called The Children's Hour. And I played a character called Mary Tilford, and she was like the complete opposite of everything that I am, which doesn't usually happen. Like a lot of times you get typecast that pretty close to your personality, and so you're at least one step closer to the character. But this was just like completely out of my range. There was so much dialogue, and we actually did it as a promenade style show. So the show is going on inside a mansion, and the audience followed you throughout the show. And the show was really long, so you were just like on the whole time. And if an audience member saw you in the hallway, you still had to be acting. And I think just the physicality of the character, that we had to do a dialect because it was in a different time period, a different region. All the like study that we did. I think it was one of the first times that like I felt just like completely like stripped down from head to toe. Like it was not me. And I felt so challenged. And I think one of the greatest like things was I was performing with a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, and so many of them were just like, that was so different from anything that you've ever done. And it was something that I never expected that I could do. And I was like so proud, and it really impacted the way that I felt moving forward, just in the sense that I think it broadened what I felt like I could do as an actor. And also what I wanted to do as an actor, because I think it challenged me to approach things differently and to go for things that maybe I wouldn't necessarily get. And even if you don't get them, like, it's okay. It's still having that confidence that you could do it. And so I think that's like what that show did for me.
That's so great. That's so great. What was the how would you say that character impacts your future, like, developing of like characters? Like when you first read a script and you're kind of bringing that character into like ways and concepts that you understand and you can express, how would you say that moved you forward?
I think I probably, a lot of it has to do with my director at the time, because he was also partially the playwright, because he rewrote parts of the play. And he was very strict on being word for word, which in theater is a lot more common than in film. But he was very just insistent on what the dialogue meant. And I think coming from theater, that's always really important to me, is that the dialogue is extremely important. And then also, he was one of, I think, the first directors that really did focus on like really minute details of character, like that I would have never questioned. And like things where it was like, oh, this is your character, but what does she do on Sundays? Just like this doesn't have anything to do with the play, but what does she do on Sundays? Like, think about that, because it will influence. Or how does she interact with her father compared to her sister? And just asking those questions that really, like, I think are now things that I really focus on, because I think it helps develop the full range of the script rather than just what you get on paper.
That's great. That's great. And it really does portray, because I feel like sometimes we're just like actors, or like I did some theater before, but I don't want to say like I'm in the same pool as you guys now, obviously out of training and outdated, but a lot of actors, like, sometimes they just read the script, and it's like, oh, but then if you embody the character and like what you said, those minute details and like what they were doing, how they are, I think that portrays into even like the mannerisms that the character has, right? And a question that goes with that, I guess, is how important do you think, or not how important, what role does empathy play in creating a strong connection between the actor and the character and the audience?
Oh, I mean, empathy is so important one of like the greatest things that a teacher ever taught me was like, you can't judge your character, because then you can't be them. Like even if you're playing like the villain, you can't judge them. You have to fully believe or have empathy for everything that they're doing to justify it. And so I think empathy is so important, because it, I think, allows you to embody flaws of your character a lot, because I think it's a lot of times you kind of start with that mentality. Well, it's like my person, like as a person, like you try and stand up for yourself and stuff like that, or you can judge things that aren't you very easily. And so I think you have to try and put yourself in those shoes and make sure that you're not judging them for their decisions or whatever the decisions are in the scripts, because then I don't think it's as truthful. If you're judging their actions, then you probably wouldn't do those actions. Yeah. And that's kind of the point, is that you're supposed to be the one making those decisions.
Yeah. So has there been a character that's ever like challenged your preconceived notions or required you to step out of your comfort zone? Like what are you talking about? And how would you handle that? Like if this is something like, oh, it's not something I would normally. Yeah.
I think it really has to, like you said, I mean, empathy is a big part of it, and finding the humanity in it is that there's always a reason for your character, you to do something. And people always have justifications for something. So I think it's finding whatever that justification is, Even if like there's a crazy, like you're playing a murderer or something, like there's a justification for why they're doing what they're doing. And obviously there's, you have to separate those enough to like still be a human and everything like that. But you just have to find like ways to connect, even if it feels strange.
No. That's something I've always talked about. No, not always. I think like around high school, college, because when we watch films, right? When we watch movies, TV shows, us personally, we always feel kind of drawn or like, oh, I resonate so much with this character. And so I've asked that question to many people, like, people who are watching the same show, like, who do you empathize the most with? And everyone has like very different answers. And I guess it's because like the actors, go the extra mile and do what you said, like, or I'm gonna express this character as much as I can, what they're going through, and everyone goes through different stuff, so it's always an interesting conversation to have, like for the viewers listening at home, do that, or even just ask yourself that, who do you resonate with in a film, who does your friends resonate with the film, and why. It's definitely a very great conversation to have about movies, and that's why also I really love films, because it really broadens our horizons. Even just like working on a film, right? Like just touching a character, or seeing a character come to life. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't see it that way. So another point to film,
Yeah.
A question for you again. What role does storytelling play in inspiring audiences and evoking emotions? And how do you craft your performances to effectively convey the story that resonates with the audience in a deep level?
This is so hard. These feel like such adult questions. I just don't feel like I'm on like this level as an actor. I guess that from my perspective as an audience member, I really enjoy when things start a conversation afterwards, when there's no right answer, when things make you angry, when maybe even when things make you uncomfortable. I think that is such a cool part about like film, theater, TV, is like when you leave not knowing how you feel about it. And so I think there's just so many areas where like you said, is like finding things that you resonate with in characters, but also like finding those characters that like make you kind of angry and that you don't necessarily like, but you love how it's being done. And so I think at least that's what you don't always get to choose what you play or things like that, but I love when there's conflict with how an audience feels about a character, when there's no one straightforward answer of like, oh, well, I loved them because they're the hero, or I loved them because like they were such a great villain. But when the hero has a lot of flaws that you're like, God, that made me so uncomfortable that they made all these choices. And so that it starts a conversation afterwards, because those have been my favorite moments, when I see a play or a movie and afterwards, like, I just can't stop talking about it because I couldn't figure it out. Yeah. Like, those are so fun. And like the feel good ones are great too, or the ones that are just scary are great too. But the ones that really stick with you are when you're like, holy cow, like, what, I still need to like be talking about this because I want to figure it out. And I think that's just what I always hope to convey in work that I do. Yeah.
Interesting. I met, there's like this event for the cleaning lady and blind spotting. And we were there and we met one of the actors from, what show was that? 13 Reasons Why.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, the first thing I told him, like, hey, man, I just want to thank you and your team for creating such a piece that at the time created so much conversation about, bullying, mental health, the school system. And that's also, like, he's probably one of the people you're like, oh, that guy's such a schmuck, such a douche. But he was so nice. He was so nice in real life, and he was just so proud that he was part of that. He was able to bring that story, that conversation around the world, you know. And I like you just watching the first season of that, I was like, yo, this had to be made. Like, because even if I was like, what I was 24, 25 at that time, and it was still resonating to like when I was in high school, I was like, oh, okay, things do need to change. Like the conversations need to like catch up and hit the communities that need to hear that, you know, or need to take participation in those conversations. So that's always interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have like a film or a show that has touched you in the same way?
I mean, so many things. It's so hard. One thing I can think of, which I was like so late to the train on Breaking Bad, but when I was so late, but when I finally watched it, that was like one thing where like by the end of it, you just hated everyone. You're like, everyone is so like, no one's good, but I loved it because like you were like, I don't know who to like. Everyone's corrupted. Everyone, but also like, is it justified? I don't know. Like that was one that I just like still to this day I was like, oh, like that was so good, and also just like a great piece of TV, so well written, so well acted. Like, I mean, you can only hope to one day like be a part of something like that. Like so that's one that definitely really sticks to me. And I mean, there's so many like movies for so many different reasons.
It's like seeing flawed characters, right? Like everyone's just like trying to get by, or you know, doing the best in their perspective, doing the best with what they have, I guess is what people call it. Yeah.
The Banshees of Inisherin from this year.
Oh, I haven't seen that
one. Watch it. Okay. Like I will literally put it up with my all-time favorite movies right now. The screenwriter, he's also a playwright, so that's probably a big reason why I loved his work, because the film was so much like a play. But once again, characters that it was really simple, but you didn't know how to feel about them because they were just making regular like human mistakes, and but also very relevant just in when you strip it down on a base of just like fighting with your friend. And there were a lot of other deeper concepts to it, but it was just such a great film.
Okay, I will add that to my ever expanding list.
Yeah, I know there's too much to watch.
Oh, there is. It's great, but also like, oh my gosh, does it end? And which it's a good problem to have, you know. People and the perspectives, I guess, are getting bigger and bigger. Like the conversations, the perspectives of who gets to tell the story, it's like increasing, and we're gonna have some questions about that later on. But right now, let's move on to the lessons you have learned, you know, up to this point. And it starts off with how acting often includes stepping into shoes of different characters with diverse perspectives. How would you say this experience broadened your own understanding of the world and influenced your interactions with the real world?
My experience with TAHANAN specifically?
Oh, well,
or just acting?
Just acting in general, yeah. You can use TAHANAN, for example, if you want.
I mean, I think it's hard to break your own habits a lot of the time and break your own thought patterns. And this is like, once again, stuff that I'm still learning and that I'm still trying. I mean, each like project is still very much a learning experience for me. Like I still find things to nitpick at, and but I think, especially with like, I guess just any acting process in general is like learning how collaborative it all is. Is that it's really important to not just, and I taking that into the real world, is that your own perspective and your own way of doing things is not the only one that matters, and that really just taking in the advice or the perspectives of the people all around you is what is going to push you forward. Because it's like, especially in this business, it's like you need to move forward with people because you would want somebody helping you out, and so therefore like help somebody else out. And I think the collaboration aspect of all of this is really important, and not going into life or projects with a set idea, because it should be able to change. It should be able to evolve into something else, because that's how you can grow and, find really cool discoveries in work and in life too.
It must be a crazy roller coaster, huh? To do something you love so much and get so much out of it. Like you give so much, but you can potentially also earn so much more.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
So if anyone's interested in acting, go for it. Even if it's like a weekend class or something. I really like. Even if you're old, I don't care. 50 years old, 40 years old, hop in a theater class.
Absolutely. I think everybody should do it. It keeps you young and feeling like a kid all the time. It's so fun.
Definitely. And acting is also like, speaking of that, people who are kind of like hesitant to start acting, because I started at a young age. I think I was like 4 or 5 years old. Maybe 5 or 6. I think so. That was like a lifetime ago. But that's like how early I was in like the theater program in school, like little kid actors, they're teaching you how to act and stuff. And I think growing up, I realized that if you didn't start it early, people realize there's a vulnerability to acting, and I just want to talk about that and how actors, or how you take that, the vulnerability that you feel and the willingness you have to step outside your comfort zone. How have you learned to embrace that throughout the years? And what advice do you have to people who are just about to start,
I think like I said before, I'm such a shy person and just an introvert. And so acting is a way for me to do things that I would never do, and to open up and share things with people that I would not share myself. But in the best way, and in such like, it's such a space that makes you feel safe, because everyone's there to accept whatever you're giving, or people are there to challenge you. And I think that the vulnerability aspect just comes from like just this really beautiful like human connection that you can have with people. And it's a beautiful connection that you can have with people who maybe in the audience or a scene partner or anything. And there's just like really nothing like it, because I think even in real life, we always have a shield up for something. But with acting, like you can scream at someone, or you can cry, and or you could just like roll around on the floor laughing and nobody cares, and it's awesome. And then you can go back to your regular life, and I'll just like sit in my room quietly. But it's just such a fun thing to do that challenges me every day in vulnerability, and to push myself outside of what I usually am.
I'm learning so much about you on this show, I hope people are too, taking this with an open heart and an open mind. Before we move on to the next questions over here, I want to ask you how you personally feel about this. Because I've gotten this, not all the time, like there's some people who are like, oh, you learned acting, so you're manipulative. Oh, you're acting, so how do I know if you're not acting now? And I'm just like, have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I think there's a really, that's really funny, because my partner Steve and I always joke about that, where like he'll do something and I'm like, you're such a bad actor. And I think there's a really big difference between people that just act in everyday life and people that like do acting for work, because I think there's a certain respect for it when you're doing it for work that you approach with like that's your job, that's what you do. And so I feel, at least from my perspective, is that I don't think the people that respect it in that way use it like that in their everyday life, or that there's a separation between the personality of how like people walk around in everyday life and what they do for acting work. I think it's a very different type of acting to be like a manipulative person. Not to say that actors can't be manipulative, but I don't think the two coincide.
Yeah. There's a term for that. The costs and I forgot what it was, but literally we were talking about that. But going on, and this segment is called Crossing Borders. And I want to start off like just sharing just a little bit of mine until like I drill you with more questions. Again, I learned acting in the great Philippines, performing arts and theater arts, and ended up taking it as a course in college. And against my mom's wishes, I found an agency because she always had she always heard bad stuff about the industry, and she wanted to keep her kids safe, is where that all comes from. And I respect that. Earlier on, I was kind of like questioning it, like, why? Why didn't you allow me to be like a baby in a Pamper commercial? How dare you? How dare you steal my spot? Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I didn't really care. But when I went into college and, I was doing like print ads, commercials, stuff like that, I saw it. I saw it firsthand, and it was more like exploiting. For lack of a better word, there was a lot of exploiting youth there. Like, oh, you have these people who want to, figure out how to get into the industry. Like, oh, okay, so I find an agent, and the agent takes all my pictures, sends me to all these auditions. We use different terms. I think the auditions there are VTR. Mm-hmm. And a lot of video, and you're like stepping to the side, and you're saying like, I'm Nicholas Barber, and you're saying it again and again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there'd be times like my favorite commercial, which is also like the one I hated the most, was for Oreo, I believe. Or it's I believe it's Cremo or Oreo. Cremo's like a Asian version of Oreo, pretty much. And very good. Both are very good cookies, If you want a sponsorship, I'm open. Please talk to me. But they would feed us Oreos, and at first I was like, I'm getting paid for this? And then after each bite, after each take, there's like a cup that comes to your mouth, and they're like, spit it out. I'm like, no. And they're like, you got to spit it out. I'm like, no, just chew faster, and like kind of spit it out. And you got someone with gloves, and then putting their fingers all in your mouth and taking it out. And after that, they give you a big check for eating and standing in front of the camera. And I'm like, this is a lot of money for a college student, so let's go. To be honest, that money went into my relationship, so I didn't really invest it. So guys, if you fall into a lot of money at a young age, definitely invest it. Taking your girlfriend out to movies and stuff is good, but balance. Have a good time and invest. But there were times where be like, hey Nick, do you want to earn even more money? I'm like, what do I gotta do? And they're like, oh, you gotta meet somebody, you gotta show them a good time. And I'm kind of, it already like, I only had that message or that warning because of what my mother said. So I feel like if I didn't understand what went on behind the scenes, I could have easily fallen for that. Because when you're young and you fall into like, performance money, it's a big deal. And crossing borders, didn't really want to do it. I was already jaded, kind of. I was like, oh, I guess that's what you gotta do to like, climb the ranks. I don't want to be part of that, so I just like dove into sports. And then I moved here, and then I was in sales, and then later on I started. I got back in with Juan Raimundo Ramos. You know him, producer of TAHANAN as well, film partner of mine. Really great man, and co-host here at the Howl. And we started Howling Gale, and that was great. And one thing I really wanted to give back was all the good things I learned. That's the border story I have with arts. Like, oh, now that I'm on the opposite side of that, what world do I want to live in? Like, do I want to uplift or do I want to exploit? And the other was not an option at all. We always want to uplift voices, uplift communities, and tell positive stories. And coming to you now, these next questions. In the film that we worked on, we're going to be talking about TAHANAN now, guys. It was a film we created last year, and it's continuing to be received pretty warmly, and Carsen Schroeder has been getting a lot of positive feedback from the audience that she has missed. But we are coming out with 2 festivals now. Diwa Film Festival. It is a Seattle-based film festival. it will be showing online as well. So for people across the world, that's one way you can see it early. It's the first chance to see it online, actually. So we are very excited. There's a lot of people who really want to see it. So Diwa Film Festival Seattle, search that up. And if you are in the LA area, we are having another festival. And I am forgetting the name of the festival.
It's the
Marina Del Rey Film Festival. It will be filmed in Culver City on the 11th of June. So feel free to hop in there. And the film is about an immigrant story, and he's finding like different people here in another country and finding out what home means, you know. And in the film that we worked on, Carsen, two cultures obviously collided, and it provided an opportunity to explore the complexities of the cultural exchange and understanding of human beings, right? What did you personally learn from this experience about in like being around the different culture, I guess, on stage and on character?
I mean, it was I didn't know anything about Filipino culture before going into the film, so I think it was kind of fun to just have this like clean slate of learning. And it was very immersive. I mean, almost everyone that worked on the film was Filipino except for me. And so I was just completely surrounded by it, by the hospitality of, people that we worked with, the welcoming nature of everyone, of the want to just share with me all of these little bits and pieces of Filipino culture that was so amazing to be a part of. And I'm so proud when I tell people about it, because it was such an exciting and different experience for me. And the food was amazing. And I still find myself eating a lot of Filipino food now because I ate so much during the film. But I think overall it was so cool to be a part of you guys being able to tell that story. Like I'm so grateful that I was able to have that opportunity. And it was such a cool way to see, there were certain aspects that are stories that you see in film, and then certain ones that aren't. And so to kind of take that and elevate it by the story of intertwining another culture in with like American culture and seeing those perspectives, I think was going to be a great thing for people to see, because it was a great thing for me to experience as well.
Yeah. And something we didn't really take into account initially, me and Juan, when we wrote it, was like, because originally it was like an 11-minute short film.
Yeah.
And it was going to be our next short film after the last one we did, which was Lifeline. It's about domestic abuse. And COVID happened, and we were just like, so what are we going to do? Like, no one's working. Might as well make this into the film we want to. So we wrote it, and it ended up being like 45 minutes. And when we started getting like Cinnamon involved with it, the AD, we love working with Cinnamon Hubler, She's actually going to be a guest pretty soon here. So guys, stay ready for that, Cinnamon Hubler. She was like, oh, this story speaks to so many people. Like the people even just transplanting from different states, because there are also, I don't want to spoil too much about the movie, but there are also other Americans who are, not originally from LA, and we focused their perspective as well. So that was something that was we were very happy to have accidentally represented that, because it was it was a very dark time, COVID, and then, stuff was happening here, stuff was happening back home, and we really just wanted to make a love letter for immigrants, and the hardships that they have to do financially, emotionally, and, physically. So that was a really good part to a really good gift, I'd say. That's how it feels like. Like, people always force me like, okay, what's the ending, Nick? And I'm like, it's whatever you and that's something me and Carsen have actually, and the other actors as well. Like, I kind of had this mist between the actors. Like, I didn't want them to know about each other's backstory too much or their intentions too much, because then that would influence their minds. So very interesting. Please catch Tahanan when it comes out in cinemas, online, whenever you can. And the next question, Carsen, is cultural exchange, whatever culture, sometimes people think culture is only like a different country. Like, as you know, probably the Philippines has vast culture, there's some languages I do not even understand. So cultural exchange often leads to personal growth and broader perspectives. Can you share a specific moment or interaction from the film that opened your eyes to a new aspect of the culture and changed your outlook?
I would say when we were shooting in Vegas, and staying with our lovely hosts, that, like I said, there was such a huge aspect of hospitality and kind of family, is that almost anyone that I met was like connected in some way or treated each other as family or with the respect of family. And that's how I felt I was treated as well. And it was something, and I see it also just in the way that you all interact with each other's art and with it. Like, I've never seen people so supportive of each other and so willing to, it's like, even in Chicago with like other friends, when it was so hard to get anyone to go to anything, to go to a show or like see someone play music. It was impossible. It was like you were pulling teeth trying to get people to go. And I've just never seen, with the people like that I've worked with on this film, the type of support that you have for each other's other work, the type of support that you got from people who wanted to help make the film. When we were in Vegas, like I felt like everyone was just like we were a big family trying to work together, and I felt like that was a cultural aspect that we just don't really have here. That everyone wanted to lift each other up and to move forward, and not just in the film but in everyday life. I think that was one of the biggest differences that I noticed and that I learned, just they're not learned but got to experience, and I'm so grateful for it.
That's great. Thank you. That's something we really, we kind of talked about this privately, but that's something me, Nicole, and Juan, we really strive. We're really hard on ourselves, the three of us, to create that culture, that there's a lot of pre-production that goes in line, and then we actually get on each other's temper sometime, like there's high stakes, but then we don't want to show it, like if there's something going wrong, we deal with it up there. Like we don't we don't bring it down to like the production crew and everything. So I'm glad, I'm glad that it is welcomed warmly, but it is something we really want to keep doing as well. Like, creating productions is a very expensive deal, and it can get very stressful at times when a lot of money is on the line. Yeah. But I'm glad that it was a very positive experience for you and the other cast members as well. Communication is such a big part in like building a film, right? Like it creates you need a family to create a film. Did you have any hardships like communicating with anybody on the set, or did anyone have problems communicating with you?
I don't think so, because I think at any point, whether it was between me and you or me and Cinnamon, or like there was always the open line of communication between somebody for whatever, like if there was something that we needed to talk about with the characters, like there was never any issue with talking about it. It was just like, and I think I would just say that that's because we had an awesome cast and crew, and that I think, there were no issues. It was like, if there was even any small hesitancy, there was always someone to talk to about it. And I think that was great, because it, like overall, it was just a great experience. And I felt like you were extremely open to like hearing things that I had to say about the character, or like just like, which was awesome, because it wasn't just like, hey, do this and be a puppet, which was great. And Cinnamon is awesome. And she was so great about just making sure, I mean, all of you were so great about making sure everyone felt comfortable in what they were doing and everyone was good. And yeah, I think like my only wish would have been to like have more time to do everything.
Oh yeah.
But that's just film, I think. Like it's fast, it's quick, it's like, let's get it done. And so yeah, my only wish would have been just to like have more time to draw it out and spend more time on each thing.
One day we will have 2 days to do a scene. But like great job. Like everybody's loves working with you, Carsen. It was like such an amazing experience on and off stage, and even just before, like preparing the character. Like believe it or not, we're very strict with our characters. Like if there's a route that someone wants to take, we're like, we don't think the character will do that. Like maybe we can try this. But you, like how you really took on this character, you really understood the essence of her, and you brought more with, I guess that's where the professionalism comes from and all the tools you have in your toolbox. You weren't saying the wrong thing. So I'm not going to say like, I didn't even think about like, oh, I should have thought about that. I was just like, wow, she knows her stuff. So I was like, oh, and it's like, because all these characters are like key pieces, right? Mm-hmm. And then the fact that you're kind of giving the creative not license, but creativity to the actor as well. That means like, oh, there's a lot of trust in there. So,
there is a lot of trust. That's hard. I mean, like I get it. I'm trying to write stuff too, and it's really hard to feel okay with handing it over to somebody, whether it's a director or an actor, because you want to like micromanage everything to make sure that whatever was in your head is like getting out there. And so I guess that's just like, I can say thank you for trusting me, because I think that's the best relationship you can have with the director.
Yeah, and it's really, really great. I can't say it enough. I really can't. And when people see when people finally see Tahanan, and see the great Carsen Schroeder, remember the hard work that she has put into this character. Also, I just want to talk about like how films have the power to educate and create empathy around the subject matter. Is that something you find is important in America in today's climate?
Oh yeah, especially with how much people consume media. I think that's the perfect platform to create empathy, because people are watching things every single day. And so if you can use that platform to create empathy, to show different perspectives, then I think it's one of the best ways that it can be absorbed. Because I think you can also do it in really creative ways sometimes that people maybe not realize that they're being like taught something, or like, like it's almost like a sneaky way of like putting a little lesson in there or something. But I think you can use film so many different ways, and I think it's such a privilege that we have to make film and TV, and that to create empathy and to create different perspectives and show different stories is so important, because people are watching things. So take advantage of it to show it to them.
Yeah. And someone who I'm very excited to be coming on the show as well is your partner in the film, Hans Braga. He's a very great guy. He, from the time of casting him, I think he was 2 years old in America at that time. And that was around like the energy we wanted for the main character, to have like a lot of sentiments about home and stuff. Do you feel like he portrayed it very well? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah. And what was I feel like I can't say a lot about the actual film, but I think one of the things that I was most, because the film is in Tagalog and English, and so Hans acting in both languages there's a transformation in between the two, and there's a way that he acts in one that he acts in another, and that probably has to do with just cultural aspects as well. But in both ways, he just portrayed such a beautiful, honest performance that I know makes a lot of people like get in their feelings. He did such a beautiful job, and I think he really, really connected with it from what I could see. And so, he was great.
It was really good too, because I guess this is a peek inside the culture from another perspective, right? Something that we seek to do also in Howling Gale is, because when I came from the Philippines and I came here, like there's a certain energy there, like, oh, this is how Filipinos are. And you come here, you're kind of like, you're Filipino, like, what's up? And then suddenly the energy's not matching. You're like, wait, something's, because we're very vibey. Like, that's the word of it. Like, if people step into a room and then you're seeing people are like, oh, this is bad vibes, I don't want to be here, man. And then someone will just be quick to just call it out like that. So, I'm not saying that Filipinos here are bad vibes. It was different. It was a different vibe. And it took me like months and years to really like understand what was happening. And so what I've discovered throughout the time, is that when their parents moved here, and this spans 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever, and you can kind of tell how they speak Tagalog, because language evolves, right? Like even how I speak Tagalog, like when I go back, some of my friends are like, you're sounding pretty old there, Nick. Like you got to update your lingo there. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't even know. But that happens throughout time. And their parents, most likely when they were like from the 80s or 70s, like speaking another language was very frowned down upon in America. So when they raised their kids here in America, they're like, don't learn Tagalog. It's only going to give you a heartache. Just learn English. So that's kind of sad that, the value of our language is diminished. So in Howling Gale, like our goal too in our community is to bring up the value. Like, oh, if Filipinos start seeing Filipinos speaking like their language without like trying to sound like, Western or American, then they'll be like, oh, then it'll encourage people to learn, and it's a long game. It's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. Maybe, it'll start with the younger people, they're like, hey, like if someone sees Hans Braga, like I can already see it. Hans is going to inspire a lot of people who have watched the film, and just creating value in our language is something we really seek to do. And I hope, I hope it does work. I hope even just like viewers not from the culture will see that, oh, it is more like migration is more complicated than someone may assume. There's more emotional turmoil for it. So that's all I have to say about it. We are reaching the end of our show, Carsen. So the last topics here are going to be more for advice. Given that you have what you may think is not a lot of experience, some people see it as mountains of knowledge and wisdom to pass. So if you were to give advice to young people or people just starting out in acting or want to get into acting, so that's 3 parts, okay? The youth, people who are considering, and the older people. What advice would you give all them?
I think don't do it for the money. Just make sure, like, if you love doing it, just do it because you really love it. And I have to continuously try and remind myself of that and follow that advice too, because it's hard when it is your job and when it's something that you're trying to do for your career, to remember the parts about it that you still love. And I guess just remembering that, like, if you do have the opportunity to act and you have that privilege, that it really is a privilege. Like, it's such a cool job, and it's like, to be able to do that if you want to, it's just like to remember how awesome that is, and that I like, and that if you want to do it, just do it. Like, don't, like, there's so many, like, if you don't want to audition for stuff, then just write something yourself. Like, don't have anybody telling you that you can't do it. And there's also no correct way to do it. I think there's a lot of expectations that there's like a point when you've made it, or you're, and we struggle, like me and my friends struggle this with like family members, like asking, well, you know, what are you in right now? Or what are you doing? Or like, oh, I don't know any of those actors. Or, you know, just at what point do people think that you've made it versus when do you feel satisfied? I think is a really important distinction. And that I hope that all actors can find a place where they just feel satisfied doing what they love, and that the money aspect can come later. You just enjoy doing it first and worry about that stuff later, if you can. We don't, and it's hard.
Thank you for that, Carsen. More stuff to possibly talk about there, but we are running close on time here. If there is anything you want to say to the audience, we have reached the end of our show, Carsen. So to our viewers in the Philippines, in America, and abroad, the mic is yours.
Just thank you in advance for watching TAHANAN. Please watch TAHANAN. So many people worked so hard on it, and I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of everyone that worked on it. It was honestly one of my like first big things in LA, and that's always going to be a really pivotal moment for me. And so just thank you to everyone that has supported that, and the team that's worked on it. Thank you to everyone that has supported me in acting, and yeah, just thank you. I'm very grateful. I'm a very grateful person to be where I am today.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that shout out, Carsen. And for everyone who wants to follow Carsen's actress journey into fame, where can they follow you? Or is that private? It's okay if you're private.
No, you can. I can't say that I'm a big poster or anything. I think my Instagram is at Carsen Daly. I can't for sure say that it is because I'm not on it very often. But yeah, I believe it's at Carsen Daly, and it's Carsen SEN, not SON. And I also have just an IMDb that you can find me at Carsen Schroeder. And yeah, that's about it. If stuff happens, it'll be there. And if stuff isn't happening, then, well, it will be, but.
Yeah. And I want to thank the people watching, and you as well, Carsen, for taking the time out of your day to be here with us today. And for anybody looking for an actress, you know, very talented actress, like everyone on our set can vouch for Miss Carsen Schroeder here. So.
Yeah, hire me. That'd be great. I would love it.